Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Please leave in the comments below where you're from, whatever time zone it's in. Today we're going to continue on our real estate study guide, and we're going to talk about agency creation and disclosure for those who are interested and been with me for a while. And I am going to go off the screen, but you'll hear me in the background. Okay, agency may be created only through the permission of both parties. However, you can become an implied agent of a customer. So an agent means you are representing a buyer or a seller, whatever case may be. So you want to be careful to avoid that, because the concept of agency is so integral to the practice of real estate and to the services client expect. A full disclosure of who you represent is vital to providing optimal service. In layman's terms, when you meet someone, you want to try, and whatever brokerage you're working for, will try and push getting this person to sign an agreement that you can represent them. When you successfully pass your real estate exam, which you will, and those who are following my study guide will pass it, and you will become a real estate salesperson. But will you be an agent? What is an agent? As an agent, do you represent the customers? Aren't they called clients? And who is the fiduciary? As you can see, there are roles within the agency relationship worth defining. And this is what we're going to talk about in this lesson. It can be a little confusing when you're first learning real estate. So let's go over our lesson resources, and then we'll answer these questions over here. An agent is someone who acts on behalf of someone else. Agency relationships require an agreement for both parties, and a lot of people are a little reluctant on signing documents when they first meet somebody. So you may not be able to get them to sign anything right away. But if they want to put a bid on a home, then they're definitely going to have to sign it, because otherwise you won't get paid and your brokerage won't get paid, and it's not going to be a good thing. You both have to agree that you're going to represent this person. You're going to look out for this person. You're going to represent them in the best possible way. You're going to get them the best deal on this house they are looking for. And you're also you're going to help them find the best house for the best amount of money that you can find them. That's what you're pretty much agreeing to. That you're going to give them the best resources possible. You're going to help them market their house, and you're going to help them buy or sell their house for the best money you can possibly get them. Another term you'll hear a lot is principal, and this is used a different way. It is used in regards to an agency relationship. A principal is the agent's client, someone who's represented by the real estate professional. The second way to term this is in regards to contract. If in a real estate purchase and sale, the parties to the contract are called principals. Which would mean that the term principal often refers to a party to a real estate transaction, the buyer, the seller, whatever the case may be. An example of this is Jean is selling her house to Marcus. You are representing Jean, the seller, and Marvin is working with Marcus. There's no agency agreement between them. Based on your agency relationship, you're going to act on Jean's behalf. She is your principal, and you are the agent and the fiduciary in your agency relationship. So you have two roles in this. Probably two or three titles. You're the agent, the fiduciary, and you're also a real estate salesperson. Marcus isn't a principal in his relationship with Marvin because there's no agency agreement between them. However, Jean and Marcus are entering into a sales contract together, and therefore principals, the parties to the transaction. Hopefully that makes sense. Client versus customer. What makes Jean your client and not your customer? It's the agency relationship. When you first meet them, they may be a customer. They say, I want to see this house you have up for sale. All right. Or they say they want you to help them find a house that's right for them. All right. Right now, they're their customer. Now, if they sign a document stating that you want them to be the agent and you're going to work with them, and specifically them and nobody else, then you have an agency relationship between you. Without that agreement, you're only her agent, and you're not going to basically be looking out in their best interest. You're not going to help them to the best of your ability because they didn't sign anything with you. They could easily go to another agent, another real estate salesperson, and get them to look up houses too. So until you get that agency agreement, that you're specifically going to work with them and them alone, and you're not going to waste their time, then this person is a customer. If someone just stopped by an open house without making significant contact with you, they would be considered a customer, and that's another way. The reason this matters so much is that under real estate law, you owe certain duties to your customers and additional duties to your client. And you can't treat a customer like a client because you would be breaching your duty to your actual clients. Knowing the difference between these two terms is very important because when you show a buyer a home, the seller of that home, he's listed through another broker, and you're representing himself as a for sale by owner to the customer. Only the buyer is your client. You don't represent the seller. And in fact, the seller asked you to negotiate against the buyer, and you did so without your buyer's permission. So you'd be violating the trust that your client placed on you, and you'd be going against your agency agreement. A consumer in real estate is not a customer. Real estate agents have no contact or limited contact with consumers. They don't owe consumers any duty. Once consumers make contact with the licensees and want to know anything about real estate related, they become customers. So for instance, if you have a website up with some property and they're just normal people cruising, surfing the internet and looking at houses, they are not considered a customer. They're not considered a client. They're not considered a customer, a buyer, seller, anything to you. They're just a consumer surfing on the internet. Now, once they make contact with you and contact you on your website and say, I'm interested in this property, can you give me any information? Then they would become a customer. Now, a non-agent, also known as a facilitator or transaction broker, is a licensee with a unique relationship with a consumer, acting as a middleman in this transaction. A non-agent doesn't represent the buyer or seller, isn't a fiduciary, and cannot provide only limited services to facilitate the transaction. So it could be somebody that works at the brokerage, could be a non-agent. And they're just like giving you paperwork. They're helping you out with certain things. That could be an example of a non-agent. A sub-agent is licensee engaged to act for another licensee and perform a brokerage task for a principal. The sub-agent owes the same obligations to the principal as does the principal's agent. Usually this is seen when a licensee from a competing firm brings the buyer to the deal, but instead of representing the buyer, the licensee works under the listing agent as a representative of the seller. I know this is a lot of verbiage if you're not familiar with real estate at all. It can be a little confusing. But the sub-agent could be, trying to break this down in layman's terms, they owe obligations to the principal's agent. They are bringing somebody from a competing firm. Let's say, for instance, I'm at EXP, and they are bringing me a buyer for my house from Keller Williams. So they are representing their buyer, and I'm representing the seller. So the sub-agency is rarely seen anymore due to the rising popularity of a buyer agent. But it is possible that you could work for a firm that has a policy forbidding sub-agencies to cooperating licensees to protect their client from vicarious liability. But instead of representing the buyer, the licensee works under the listing agent as a representative of the seller. So this is very rare, it sounds like, because it doesn't sound like the person, maybe the buyer agent is busy and they can't come to the table and they're getting a sub-agent to come for them. That's the way I'm reading this. If you're the buyer's agent, you can't be a sub-agent in the same transaction in which you represent the buyer, and you must make your status known as the buyer's agent clear to the seller's agent before showing the seller's property. Instead of a unilateral offering of a sub-agency, listing brokers and sellers usually offer commission share to cooperating buyer's agent. That way the seller is still represented via the listing firm. We can go through this a little more because this is a little confusing if you're not in this world already. Okay, hopefully that didn't confuse you too much. If you need a copy of any of these resources, just contact me on my website and the contact page, and I can send it to you free of charge. A licensee who acts on behalf of a client. Now remember, we're talking about a client here, not a customer. I want to say an agent. Someone who has agency representation with the real estate salesperson or broker. I would say this would be a client. Now remember, it says here agency representation, okay? If they don't have any representation, they would just be a customer. Someone who's working with a real estate agent or broker but is not representative. Okay, this is what I'm talking about here. This is probably a customer. Could be a non-agent too, actually. But we'll say that. We'll keep going. Licensee who is in position of trust and loyalty. Maybe fiduciary. I'm not sure what to say. The middleman. Maybe the principal. Party to the transaction and the person for whom the agent acts. I don't know. Let me look at this thing again. See if non-agent, what they say on non-agent. It's a facilitator or transaction broker. So this might be the non-agent right here. But not represented by them. Person of... Who is in position of, let's see, party to the transaction and whom the party to a transaction and whom the party and the person for whom the agent acts. Represented. Someone who's represented by a real estate professional. Now, I might have to go through this one more time. Let's see. Licensee who acts on behalf of the client. Agent. Someone who has agency representation with the real estate salesperson or broker. Someone who has agency representation. Representation with the client. Representation. Agency representation would be a client. Okay. Someone who is working with a real estate but is not represented by them would be a customer. Licensee who is in position of trust and loyalty, I want to say, is a non-agent. Trust and middleman. Where's middleman on here? Middleman is non-agent. Okay. Position of trust and loyalty. Is this principal? Okay, party to a transaction and for whom the agent acts. I think this is principal here. And let's try this and see if it works. Okay, I wouldn't have been able to do it without this resource over here. So let's go through this. If you want to take some pictures again, that's fine. A licensee who acts on behalf of the client is an agent, someone who has agency Representation is a client. Someone who's just working with a real estate salesperson or broker is a customer. They are not represented. Licensee who is in position of trust and loyalty. I would say fiduciary duties. So trust and loyal is that. Someone who acts as a middleman, a facilitator in a transaction is a non-agent. And this could be like a title company as well, as what I'm thinking, because sometimes they are facilitating in closing, but they're not involved in the transaction actually. Party to a transaction and the person for whom the agent acts as a principal. Okay, and if you wanted to take any pictures, you should have done so by now. Okay, so we're going to end this video because I don't want to go on too crazy, and we're going to do non-agency in Maryland. Let me see, because not all of you are in Maryland. This can apply to any state, really. This is agency terminology. I think we should keep going. There's only 2 more pages. Okay, this is a real estate licensee. Allison just received a call from the Masons. They are interested in putting their house on the market. Allison meets with the Masons the next day and is excited about this new prospect. She leaves them her business card and a promise to call back in 2 months. Why 2 months? I don't know. But Allison leaves with an unsigned agency agreement and contact information for Brent, their son, who is ready to buy his first home. Well, that's really poor. Are the Mason Allison's clients? No, they're not clients. They didn't sign an agency agreement. Okay. Allison is quickly building her book of business and was thrilled to meet with Brent. In a matter of days, she had an agency agreement signed by Brent. They searched for properties on the MLS and had several showing schedules. Okay, agent is Allison. The fiduciary is Allison, because that's trust and loyalty. The client is Brent. The principal is Allison, maybe? I don't know about the principal. Let's check it. No, I don't know. Okay, I guess the principal would be Brent. Okay, the agent is Allison. The fiduciary is Allison. The client is Brent. And I guess the principal is Brent. So that helps clear it up. The person who is actually the client could also be a principal. Okay, great work. Remember, Allison is the agent fiduciary, not the customer. The client is also a principal. Okay, now the flashcards we're going to do in a separate video because we go through them a little bit and it helps you study. And you can keep watching those flashcards over and over and over, and it will help you with agency terminology. So if you're following along on this study guide series here, then this will be in the next one, and you might want to bookmark it or whatever. Thank you all for watching.